How's it going?
Hey, Mr. Jimbo, how you doing?
Yeah, I heard you were over here doing a little finish cleaning.
Yes, sir. Just wrapping up. About ready to have it on the market.
Yeah, well, it looks really nice.
Yeah, it's a good thing you stopped by today because I'd been wanting to talk to you about something. I really know that the Lord has brought Joy and I's path together, and I've seen him working firsthand, and I wanted to ask for a blessing for her hand in marriage.
Austin, that's a big step.
There is a place in the hills of Madison County, Arkansas, where a lot of families go to feel safe. It is a family camp, a Christian retreat, the kind of place that posts smiling photos and talks about community and faith and raising children the right way. But last week, a call was made to Madison County Dispatch, and what that caller described does not sound like a safe place at all. Everything discussed in this video comes from public court records, verified news reporting, and official legal documents, including dispatch logs available to the press in Arkansas. Now, before we get into what that dispatch log actually says, you need to understand the world this story is happening inside. Because without that context, none of this makes sense. Most people know the Duggar family from their reality television years. 19 kids, a very specific religious framework, a very controlled public image. What fewer people know is that the Forsyth family, the family that Joanna Duggar married into when she wed Austin Forsyth, operates inside a world that people who grew up near them describe as equally controlled. Austin Forsyth's father, Terry Forsyth, owns and operates Fort Rock Family Camp in Madison County. It is a working retreat. Families come there, children come there, and according to multiple people who know that community, Terry Forsyth runs his family the way the camp runs, tightly, with authority flowing in one direction only. Now, here's where the timeline becomes important. In recent months, Joanna Forsyth has been speaking publicly, including on a podcast, about how her family has been going through one of the hardest periods of her life. She referenced her faith. She talked about her own pain. What she did not talk about was this. According to a Madison County dispatch log from last week, and these logs are public record available to the press, an anonymous caller contacted Madison County Dispatch with a serious allegation. The caller stated she had been made aware of multiple cases of sexual misconduct involving children. She stated that parents with knowledge of what happened were refusing to report it. She stated those parents had instructed the children not to report it either, and that if authorities asked questions, the children were to lie. The caller named a specific individual connected to Fort Rock Family Camp and alleged that over a period of 2 to 6 years, that person had repeatedly engaged in misconduct with minors on the property. The caller stated that an apology had been made privately to the families involved, and that the families had accepted that apology in exchange for not going to police. Let that land for a second, because what is being described here is not just an isolated accusation. It is a pattern that anyone who has followed this world for any length of time will immediately recognize. We have already seen, in this same extended community, a situation where an apology was treated as resolution, where accountability to God was considered more important than accountability to the law, where the instinct of the people in authority was to manage the situation internally and keep it quiet. The belief system connected to many of these families, including the Institute in Basic Life Principles, teaches that confession and repentance within the community can satisfy the consequences of wrongdoing. The legal system in this framework is secondary. What matters is confessing the hidden sin. What matters is getting right before God. And here's the part that most people overlook. If you grow up inside that worldview and something happens to you, and the adults around you tell you it has been handled, that he said sorry, that God will judge, that you are not to speak of it, what do? You stay quiet, because that is what you were taught to do. And that silence is exactly what allows patterns like this to continue unchallenged. Now, the dispatch log is exactly what it is, a starting point. Madison County Sheriff's Office would need to investigate before any of this becomes anything more than an allegation on paper. No charges have been filed. No arrests have been made. The individual named in that log has not been convicted of anything. But here is what is worth paying attention to. The person named in that dispatch report, Bobby Ballinger Jr., lives at Fort Rock Family Camp. He recently ran for state office in Arkansas with significant political support. His father, Bob Ballinger, a former state senator with long ties to this community, was sworn in this week to a state elections board. That is not a conspiracy. That is a publicly verifiable fact. And it raises a legitimate question about whether the infrastructure exists in Arkansas to hold any of these individuals accountable, especially when the allegations involve a community with political connections and a documented history of handling things internally. And that brings us back to Joyanna. According to people who know her, people who grew up in the same world she did, Joyanna is not simply choosing to stay quiet. She is operating inside a system that has conditioned her, her entire life, to defer to the authority above her, to protect the family, to absorb pain privately and present faith publicly. When she appeared on that podcast recently and spoke about walking through one of the darkest periods of her life, the people who know her heard something different than the public heard. They heard someone still inside the system, still playing by the rules she was raised with. Whether she knows the full extent of what may be happening around her, that is something no one outside that circle can say for certain. What we can say is this. A caller in Madison County was worried enough about what she knew that she picked up a phone and created a record, even anonymously, because she understood that doing nothing was not an option. That is the part worth holding on to. In communities like this one, the pressure to stay silent is enormous. The fear of retaliation is real. The belief that the law is less important than the community's judgment is deeply embedded. But silence has a cost, and that cost is always paid by the children. If this allegation is investigated and nothing is found, then the system worked the way it is supposed to. But if it is true, and if there are people who know something and are saying nothing, then the lesson from every other case in this extended community applies here too. The cover-up always makes it worse. If you have information relevant to any active investigation in Madison County or Tontitown, Arkansas, you can contact the Arkansas Child Abuse Hotline or your local law enforcement. The identity of reporters is protected under Arkansas law in good faith reporting situations. This story is developing. When there is more to report from verified sources, we will cover it.